The book that I've chosen to share with all of you today is Becoming Supernatural: How Common People Are Doing the Uncommon by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And this is a fairly recent read for me, even though it was published in 2017. So, as we all know, manifestation is kind of a hot topic these days, especially this time of year, being, heading into the first of the year before we know it. And this book, I'll say loosely, is on manifestation, although I don't want to oversimplify what Dr. Dispenza shares with us. The second reason that I wanted to share it is that for some of us entering onto or going down this personal development journey, we can often find ourselves being brought into that metaphysical or spiritual realm, but we still need some, I'm going to say more concrete or linear perhaps, answers to kind of back things, more scientific proof or prove it to us proof. And this book is that. So as we dig into this, I'm kind of bringing this into layperson terms or Tina terms in some ways. And so for me, some of the, key takeaways or points are this: that we do not have to be the person that we were yesterday or that we are today or that we think we are today, or we don't have to have that same health that we currently have. We have the power within us to create the life, create the health that we choose, which is crazy. For most of us out there, though, we have to find a way to have two things, in my humble opinion: belief and commitment. Unfortunately, for so many of us, we like a quick fix. We like to take a quick pill. We like to have the results immediately. And we're somewhat, and sounds harsh, but we're unable or unwilling to show commitment long enough to create the change that we wish to see. It's just kind of the facts of where we are in the Western society, especially these days. We wish for that quick fix to solve our problems for us, and we often don't fully believe. So even if we start something to start creating that change, we expect instantaneous results. And if we don't have them, we move on or we quit. And that's not what this is about. We have to want something badly enough to create that change. So like most books that I share on here and we discuss, I'm not going to cover this whole book. Absolutely impossible, and I don't want to butcher things. So I'm going to give focus to kind of the first 2 or 3 chapters and just pick out some stories and things and go from there. And you can make choices as to reading it further down the road. But in a nutshell, Dr. Dispenza uses this book to provide the science and to explain the science behind the power of transformation, of our ability to transform. And he shares numerous brain scans, energy reads, heart coherence charts, to support what he's trying to explain to us and to show us so that we can tap into our power. Throughout the book, Dr. Dispenza will give examples or testimonials of these transformations, and that allows us to kind of see it in action and not just read it. And I think, like anything, we need to see it to believe it if we are on that linear path that we talked about before, especially. So this puts, was it the saying, proof in the pudding. And so I want to start by giving you a couple of the stories that he shares, and they just happen to be very personal to him. So the first of the 2 stories is Dr. Dispenza himself. In 1986, he was doing a race. I think it was a triathlon. So he was in the bike portion of it, and a police officer, said, "Go ahead, go this way." Well, unfortunately, behind the police officer was a truck that came through and ran him over. He went flying over and he landed hard, and he messed up multiple vertebrae of his back. It was looking like he was going to be wheelchair bound and was going to have what's the word for it? Have a, a thing. He's gonna have a thing in his back. Now, coming from his background in not just science, but in the spirituality aspect and trying to do that bridge, he said, let's take a time out for a second and let me try to handle this. So while he was laid up, he got thinking about it, he researched, and he said, okay, if A and B equals C, then if I can really figure this out and give focus to rebuilding my spine, in essence, this could work. So he had a lot of frustration because it's in going into meditative states that he was going into, and having true intention on healing himself and doing it from an elevated state, which we'll get into later, an elevated state of the feeling, the emotions of how it would feel for him to be healed, not in a wheelchair, but him to be fully healed and be able to bike again, we'll say. He knew he could get there. But like any human being, you have that little bit of a doomsday, about it, and you get distracted. Your thoughts take over, and that's the awareness that we have to tweak, is that staying in that focus and staying in that elevated frequency. And he did this. At first it was 3 hours a day, and eventually he got down to 45 minutes. And within 12 weeks, he was healed, no back pain, and he was back on the cycle. And it's just pretty incredible. The power of reclaiming our thoughts and visualizing, with feeling a desired outcome. And that's really what this book kind of is gearing us to learn, that we have the power within us to heal. Okay, so the second story is a little bit different, and it's more about manifestation for abundance. Now, mind you that abundance can have different terminology, but this particular story is about his son. So his son went college, graduate school, went into, did the expected thing, went into his field of study and was doing the job, but kind of, lost the love of it. And so he quit his job, took 6 months off, I believe, and went to other parts of the world to surf, because surfing was his true passion. He did that for 6 months, had a great time. He then calls his dad and says, "Dad, it's about time for me to come back. I need to figure out what I'm going to do when I get back. My mindset's different than when I came out of college and went into the field that I was in." And his dad said, "Okay, if you're truly committed, I need you to do these things." And he gave him the series of things, but it was a lot of putting down not necessarily the job that he wanted, but what he wanted out of the job and what feelings he would have if he in fact got that job. And he wanted him to meditate on that for every day until he came home. So he said, "Yes, Dad, I can do that." And he did it. And he came home and he didn't have the job, and he called his dad. He was in a different city. And he said, "Dad, I'm home. I don't have a job. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm running out of money." And Dr. Dispenza said, "I could have done the easy thing." He said, "I've got you, bud. I can give you money." But instead he wanted to say, "Great. Your back's up against the wall. Now's the time to really dig in and make this happen." So his son decided before he dug in that he was going to go on a little ski trip over the weekend with his college buddies, and then he'd come back and get serious. He went skiing. He came back after the long weekend. He walked into a surf shop. Remember, he loves surfing. There was an owner there of a surfboard company, and he just happened to be looking for an engineer to create these fins and take the surfboard industry by storm. No interview, no application process. He was offered the job on a 1-year term, got to travel and surf and make more money than he was making in his job prior to leaving on his 6-month expedition. It was everything he had written on that list. He didn't go find the job found him. A quick pause to shift gears. We've got some added sun coming through the window here, but real quickly to loop back, 2 incredible stories. Yes, they're both personal to Dr. Dispenza, so I'll give some more in a second, but one coming from the healing standpoint and one coming from manifesting abundance standpoint, and both really incredible. And I think what they do is give us examples of the power that's within us and hope or inspiration that we can create that for ourselves. But he does actually, I think it's chapter 1, there's a multi-page story of a woman who lost a spouse and the stress and what that stress caused within her body until she was able to, little by little, get into this state and pull herself out and heal herself. So that is another story that's out there, as well as some experiments that he shares from third-party organizations to that, have a subject group or a control group and have them doing certain activities, be it learning piano keys or building muscle mass. And then the little group over here that is just going at it with intention and an elevated emotional state about doing those things, and at the end of the study having similar results. So it's really quite fascinating, and he does give us a lot to kind of back up and in simple terms, in addition to the scientific terms that he's providing to us, to show us that it is possible. Let's shift gears for just a moment. So many of us are living in the past, whether we want to admit it or not. The actions that we take today are based off from past experiences. The emotions that we often can feel are based off from past experiences, be it good or maybe not so good at times. We have literally trained our bodies and our minds into this kind of autopilot based off from our past experiences. Now, on the side, let's combine that with so many of us being in a constant state of stress that our bodies were not meant to be in for long-term periods of time. So what Dr. Dispenza is challenging us to do is to raise our awareness, because our thoughts become our beliefs, become our habits, become our actions, and that's when we become unconscious, that autopilot. By being aware and taking a second to be aware of what we're doing, we can alter our thoughts, which alter our habits or beliefs, which alter our habits, which alter our actions, which bring us more into conscious living. So yes, our bodies and minds will want to return to what they know based off from those past experiences, because new things are uncomfortable and our brains and our bodies beg us to go back to what is known based off from those past experiences. So, although we need to live in the present state, and we're taught that to be in the now, it is necessary, especially to be present with our children, to be present with our partners, to be present with our coworkers, or where we are in this moment, to have gratitude and appreciation for things. There is also this future piece to it, to visualize what we want our future to be, to get to that elevated state in this future, because it allows us to enter this quantum field. And that's something that most of us don't talk about on a day-to-day basis, because we're creating this experience that can manifest in our physical world. And we are sitting with this new vision, and we're bringing ourselves with intention to these elevated emotions, right? Over and over again, daily, because when we do that, we make that, whatever it is that we are wanting to manifest, we're making it a possibility in our little simple 3D world here. I know, it's quite trippy, and there's definitely a believability trajectory that we have to get on, and it's a lot, I know, and that's why I feel like I need to go back and reread this book, because when I did it the first time, it was kind of choppy over time, and I was underlining a lot, but now I need to go back and almost reread at least the underlying parts of it. It's just, there's so many good books to read out there, and I have a stack of to be read that when I finish one book, I want to grab a new book. But I think this one is I don't want to call it dense, but it's a lot. And so for anybody out there that this may have sparked an interest or hope or inspiration, I would recommend, and how I stumbled upon this, even though the book again has been out since 2017, is that I had not listened to Jay Shetty's podcast, and I saw that Dr. Dispenza and Jay were on the podcast together. So, and this was in 2023, by the way. And so I went on and I watched it, and I was captivated. And so the name of the podcast, again, it was in 2023. I think Dr. Dispenza's been on his podcast prior to that, but it's How to Brainwash Yourself for Success and Destroy Negative Thoughts. But it's all the same stuff here. So I would really recommend, I think it's an hour plus long in duration. I would recommend listening to that, and if it sparks a light in you, then go buy this book or one of his other more recent books, perhaps. I've not read anything else besides this one, but I would recommend that. Now, I'm gonna pause for a second here because I want to share with you too that for me personally, I don't think I would have been ready for this book prior to now, prior to when I started reading it. I often need primers, and often that comes in way of other books, because it's not necessarily could I understand the content, but there was a piece of that. It was also was I ready to believe some of this? And so the books that showed up to me, I want to share with you real quickly. Just a quick pause while I went and grabbed the books. I completely forgot to do that. So just real quickly, I'm going to try to hit on these three because I really do feel like they were the primer for me being ready for not only the content, but for the believability to then consume, becoming and digest, becoming supernatural. And the first one that kind of showed itself to me is the Silva Mind Control Method. And it showed up by Jose Silva, by the way. And it showed up to me for like 2 or 3 years, and I finally bought it after a few months. And I think my hesitance was that whole mind control piece of it. But it was really revolutionary for its time, again, 1977. And Jose really tested and pushed the boundaries of science to show that meditation and visualization could be transformative in many aspects of our lives. He worked on training people to get to that alpha level during meditation, including his own kids, so that it could impact their test taking. And he had a lot of kids, if I remember right. So that was a really good book to kind of start with. Then came Vishen Lakhiani, and I'll talk about this book in a second, but Vishen was living out in San Francisco and was struggling as the bubble burst, and found a course or somebody that was teaching the course on the Silva Mind Control Method. And he went to the course, and it really altered the trajectory of his path. And in doing so, he ended up creating the Mind Valley, which is, I think, the world leader of transformational education. And I'm sure many of you have heard of Mind Valley at this point. And so in 2022, Vishen came out with this book, the 6-Phase Meditation Method, and it really kind of consolidates so many practices that some of us may find difficult to incorporate into our day-to-day. But part of that is this Silva method. And so there's many components of it. I did a video of it, I think earlier this year in 2024, and you can I'll tag it at the end of this, and so that you can watch that and learn more about the details of the meditation. But it's really incorporating in that manifestation and visualization piece of it, in addition to the other things of the 6 phases. So along the same time that I was probably doing Vishen's book, another book was recommended to me, and I hadn't heard of it at all, and it's called A Happy Pocket Full of Money, let me back it up here. Infinite Wealth and Abundance in the Here and Now by David Cameron Gikandi. And once again, the name can be, I don't want to say off-putting, but it may have stalled me a little bit, but I promise you it's not all about money. He does get into visualization, and not a visualization board, but a long-term book. And so that's kind of fascinating. But the chapter particularly that helped me was on quantum physics, and it was like quantum physics 101, and I found that awesome for me because it was layman's terms. I'm not a science person, but I have this analytical or linear way of being, and it was very helpful, and I do believe that it helped me open up my believability, open up my consideration to then be able to consume and digest becoming supernatural. So that's in a nutshell. I will put these 3, I guess, in the comments and kind of give you the information on them real quickly if you want to look for them there, if you think it would be helpful for you. But as always, that Jay Shetty podcast I think is great too, because it's an hour or so probably, and you're hearing it right from Dr. Dispenza, and he can be very succinct in the information that he provides, and I think it will give you pause and maybe inspire you to research more or consume more. And that is a wrap for today. I hope this has been helpful in some way, and I will be back probably in 2 weeks with another book video. We'll see which one comes next. And in the meantime, please be well and keep stepping forward.